So as Nick mentioned, my name is Elayne Gordonov, and I'm the product manager for Instron static software. So that's Bluehill Universal and Trend Tracker. And in today's webinar, I'll be covering Bluehill's brand new module, the traceability module. So while we'll be reviewing traceability today, the module itself will not be released until February, so in about a month's time, so just keep that in mind. In today's webinar, we will start off by covering the main regulatory requirements that led to the development of Bluehill's traceability module. We'll review the 5 main components of traceability, which are enhanced security, method revision history, sample change tracking, electronic signatures, and finally, a system-level audit trail. After briefly introducing each of these components, I'll do a software demonstration to walk you through a scenario of a laboratory using Bluehill's traceability module. And then finally, we'll open it up to some Q&A. Before jumping into things, we want to ask you for your opinion and thoughts. So in the chat box, you should have a chat box on your screen. So I just want to throw a question out there. Why should materials testing data be traceable? And I'll give you a few seconds to type in your responses, and we'll wait for those responses. Okay, so a lot of you are saying things like the FDA, FDA requirements, tamper-proof results. So while all of these things are true, I guess on a broader level, well, so why does the FDA set these requirements, or why should results be tamper-proof? So I thought about this a little bit, and what comes to my mind is that having traceability means consistency in your data. Lab managers can set permissions and testing workflows to ensure testing is conducted to your company's protocols and generating consistent data from user to user. Another word that comes to mind is accuracy. Lab managers and administrators can guarantee that users are not changing results or critical method parameters without approval. So we all know that with materials testing, something like changing the test speed, that could drastically affect your results. Accuracy is another word that comes to mind. And finally, confidence comes to my mind. So lab managers can ensure that users did what users said they were going to do. And lab managers have the confidence that they're able to prove it in an audit. So ultimately, generating traceable data means that your laboratory and your company are held to high quality standards and create quality products. So while the US FDA does set strict requirements to enforce traceability, we believe that almost every laboratory, if not all labs, could benefit from this new Bluehill traceability module. So while all laboratories aim to produce valid testing results, there are some major international standards and regulations that enforce traceability. So the one that I think most of the folks on the line know about is the US FDA CFR Part 11. So this is a requirement for medical device and pharmaceutical companies, and this pertains to electronic records. So really knowing who did what, when, and why, and being able to prove that in an audit. So another major regulatory requirement is Nadcap. So Nadcap is found in the aerospace industry. And so this is for aerospace companies that maybe are making composite materials or metals to supply to the aerospace industry. But this requires superior supplier quality, and that's achieved through technical audits. And finally, ISO 17025. So this pertains to testing labs. And this is a certification that enables labs to demonstrate the ability to operate competently and generate valid testing results And so with an ISO 17025 cert, a lab is able to do testing in one country and publish those results, but also those results can be used from one country to another. So that's a pretty big certification that some test houses have. So with that said, let's jump in into the different components of Bluehill Traceability, with the first component being Bluehill Security. So Bluehill Security is used to create user profiles to access the Instron system. At a high level, Bluehill Security is used to ensure data integrity and safety. So data integrity can be achieved by configuring user profiles. Just some examples here. So you can only give permissions to people that are maybe power users or super users to edit methods. You can prevent users from deleting tested specimens. You can also prevent users from overriding existing data. So by using Bluehill Security, you can set permissions to make sure that your lab is enforcing data integrity. And safety. So with using security, you can only make sure that configured users have access to the system. So if someone doesn't have access, if they're not set up within Bluehill, they can't do things like jog the Instron frame, or they just can't access the system through Bluehill. So that prevents untrained operators from maybe doing something by mistake and jogging the frame or testing something that they haven't been trained to do so. So once security is turned on, there are 3 different security types. So those are Active Directory, Windows, and Bluehill Security. Active Directory means that Bluehill permissions are set using user profiles and groups set on your corporate network. Windows Security means that user profiles and groups are defined on the local Instron PC. Finally, Bluehill's inbuilt security means that individual user profiles are configured directly in Bluehill Universal. All 3 options are available in Bluehill's base product, and the ability to link Bluehill Security to Active Directory groups and Windows local groups that was released in December of 2018 in Bluehill version 4.08. So also released in version 4.08 were several new security permissions. Here I have a screenshot of Bluehill's security configured to use Active Directory groups. The new configurable permissions are highlighted, and I won't go over these in great detail, but some notable permissions added are highlighted in the second box, such as the ability to prevent users from discarding sample files and preventing users from overwriting existing sample files. So if you're interested in more information on the security permissions, there was a webinar that was released in December of last year. I encourage you to check out this previous webinar recording if you're interested, and you can find this free informational webinar on instron.com. We'll also share the link with you right now. So if you're interested, you could just click on that and then minimize it, and that's you can download that and watch the recording for free. So with the release of Bluehill Traceability, there are 3 new permissions that have been added into security. So now administrators or lab managers can configure traceability, which essentially gives a user permission to turn on the audit log, turn on the revision history, and configure electronic signatures. In addition to this, there are 2 permissions for secondary reviewer and tertiary reviewer, both related to electronic sign-off. So we'll get into those a bit more later, but I just wanted to point out where a user is configured to have these permissions. So in summary, Bluehill Security is the first component of traceability, and using security is essential to set software permissions and configure users to determine the who is doing the testing on the Instron system. The second component of traceability is method revision history. For those who are unfamiliar with Bluehill, the method file is like the recipe. How the method is configured determines the testing parameters. So in this screenshot, you can see a new icon highlighted. This is where the revision history is stored within the Bluehill method. So by clicking on this icon, the user will see the entire method change log, including pending changes, which is what you can see in this screenshot here. So this is what would appear by clicking that icon. You can see the full method revision history. So going into a bit more detail, method revision history tracks pending and saved changes in a Bluehill Universal method. When configured with electronic signatures, a user must enter their username and password to save changes. And the save as function, so if you're going to save a method, instead of just clicking save, if you just save as, that will clear the method revision history for that given new save. But it allows users to link the original method to the new method. So this is ideal for labs that say will develop a test method, they're going to make a whole bunch of changes, bit of trial and error, use that method, but they want to capture that whole revision history. And then when that method gets pushed to production, say that method gets a save as and is labeled with a new name, but can be linked to that original, say, that development method. So all of that revision history is not lost. So the third component of traceability is sample revision history. The sample file in Bluehill is the file that stores the testing data. A user can view the sample revision history directly from the sample file by selecting the icon I have highlighted here in this screenshot. So very similar to the method revision history, the sample revision history, if you click that icon, it opens up a separate box that will show the full sample revision history. So going into a little bit more detail on this, the sample revision history tracks all pending and saved changes made in the Bluehill Universal sample file. When configured with electronic signatures, a user must enter their username and password to save as well as finish that sample. And then the save as to sample file can be blocked so that users won't overwrite existing data or save data to an incorrect location. So if you want operators to simply run a test and then generate the PDF report, they would just hit the finish icon, and there isn't even an option to do a save or a save as to that sample file. And the fourth component of traceability is electronic signatures. So electronic signatures are optional. So you can determine if you want to use them. You would simply turn them on in the admin tab. So electronic signatures can be configured and required for report templates, method files, sample files, or PDF reports. So in this screenshot example, I have that report templates just require your primary sign-off. The methods would require a secondary sign-off, so that would be 2 people would need to sign off on that, the person that's making the change, as well as 1 approver. Same with sample files, that's configured for a secondary sign-off. So the person that's making the change to the sample file would save, and then someone would have to sign off as an approver. And then finally, the PDF report here, that's configured with a tertiary sign-off. So not only is the person that's generating the PDF report have to sign off on that, you need a secondary and a third person to actually approve that PDF report. And these are all configurable, so you could choose that you don't want anyone to sign off on methods, but you need 3 people to sign off on the PDF report. That would be determined how you would want to run your lab. So if the secondary and or tertiary signatures are configured, these reviewers can access their reviews directly in Bluehill. The Reviews tab, which is in the Admin tab under Traceability, it allows lab managers or those power users or super users to review, accept, and or reject changes to any report templates, method files, sample files, or the PDF reports. So here in this screenshot, I could be maybe a secondary approver, and I would see in my reviews that I have a method to approve, and simply from this window, I would approve that method or reject it. And finally, the fifth component of traceability is the system level audit trail. So the system level audit trail logs all changes made on that Instron system. So that's everything from configuring the system itself, configuring security, login, log out attempts, failed login attempts, all method changes, and all sample file changes. So we reviewed the method revision history as well as the sample revision history. So while those are contained in those individual files, it also shows up in this audit log. And then there's also information in the audit trail regarding any approvals or rejections that happen. So that's all within this audit log. It's comprehensive for the entire system. So now that we've covered the 5 components of traceability on a high level, I'd like to run through a demonstration with 5 characters here. So here we have Adam. He's the administrator, so that he's like the IT guy. Maya is the manager, so she runs the lab. Sally and Sam, they're super users, so they're really the Instron experts. They're using the Instron system day in and day out. And then there's Newt. So Newt is the new guy. He's the new hire. He doesn't have a lot of experience with the system right now, but hoping that he'll be a super user someday, but he's brand new. So in terms of permissions, the way the system is configured, Adam is kind of like the souped up user. He has permissions to configure the system and security, and then it kind of trails off from there, whereas Newt really doesn't have any permissions. All he can do is really run a test. So with that, let's open up Bluehill here. So I'm on the Bluehill Universal login screen, and I'm going to log in as Adam, and again, he is the administrator. So when Adam is logged in, he has full access to the entire test system. So although he might not be running tests every day, he gave himself access to everything within Bluehill. He's going to go into the admin tab. And first I'm going to look at security. So when Adam, when the Instron system was being installed and he got Bluehill Universal, he was on site at that time, so he helped determine how these users would be configured along with Maya. So Adam's in here, Maya's in here. Maya again is the manager, so she's not allowed to configure the system, configure security, or configure traceability. Whereas Adam, again, gave himself access to do everything. And then you have Sally and Sam. So these are the super users. So while it looks like they don't have permissions to do a lot, they're able to test specimens, edit methods, and they're also both secondary reviewers. So they're able to review each other's work. And then we have Newt, the new guy. He's really not allowed to do anything. The only thing he's allowed to do is test specimens because no one really trusts him that much yet. So one thing that I want to point out, also this is using Bluehill's security in the software. So you do also have the option of setting password permission. So right now it's disabled, but if I wanted to enable that, I can say make users reset their passwords, say every 30 days, or whatever you choose to be your password reset policy. Whereas if you're using Windows or Active Directory, password expiration criteria would be set based on your corporate network. So while I'm logged in as Adam, the administrator, let's take a look at the traceability page. So right now there are no reviews in the system. So reviews, again, that's where you would sign off as a secondary or tertiary approver. Let's take a look at the audit trail. There should be a lot there. So, okay, I only have 111 entries, so you would expect there to be a lot more there. So this shows all of the activity on the system. And I can filter that activity since this could be a lot to go through. So say I want to know something kind of strange. Maybe I want to know, okay, who logs into the system? I want to see who's logging in just to kind of keep track of that access. So here I can see all the people that logged in, the date, and the timestamp. And say now I also want to include log out. Now I'd also be able to see who's logged in and who's logged out of the system. Or something like maybe I want to see all the invalid credentials. So who's potentially maliciously trying to get into the system as someone else, to impersonate someone else as a user, or just when are people maybe, mistyping their password. So that doesn't really happen that often here. You can see maybe Newt just forgot his password and someone made some mistakes. So you're able to filter out information within the audit trail since this file can get quite long. You also have the ability to change date ranges within the audit trail if you want to search for a specific user, if you know they did something. And you also have the search criteria. So there is a field within the comment. You can search, maybe make a specific comment, and then you're able to actually search the audit trail directly from the Bluehill user interface to try to pick up an entry maybe that you're specifically looking for. So that's the audit trail at a pretty high level. You can also print that if you wanted to, but generally you should be able to access all your information directly through the software. So next, let's look at signatures. So I'm going to pretend to edit that. So again, as I mentioned in the earlier slides, electronic signatures are configured for report templates, method files, sample files, and PDF reports. So here I can set maybe to the reports I don't need any signatures, but for the individual methods I want a secondary, so you can split these up. As well as, and so Adam is the administrator, so that's the only reason why he has access to edit these signatures. So if he were to change anything here, since traceability is on, he'd have to add a comment as well as put in his password as his sign off that he's actually making these changes. For this system, I do have it set to require a comment. But you could turn that off if you say simply want your users to type in their username and password and you feel like a comment isn't necessary. You can turn that off here. But right now, for this demonstration, I'm going to keep that on. And finally, the setup. So this is where someone would configure traceability. Only an administrator would be able to configure this. And you can always block the permission so that once it's turned on, that user cannot turn it off. So that's Bluehill Traceability at a high level. So now what I'm going to do is log out. So now I'm going to log in as Sally. So just as a reminder, Sally is a super user. Log in. So Sally's home screen looks a little bit different. She doesn't have access to the analysis function, but she does have access to the method tab. So that's a pretty powerful permission. So she's going to go in and edit a method. So she has her method A here. She's going to go in and click that one. So now that that method is open, for those of you who are familiar with Bluehill Universal or earlier versions of Bluehill software, you can see on this general tab, this page looks a little bit different now. So we have some information here that who the test method was last saved by. So Sally recently already edited this method. You can also see that there's a revision history here. So note that that says revision 5. There are signatures configured. So if you remember in the admin tab, we had a primary and secondary signature requirement for methods. So that you can see here the last history of that, as well as this new icon, which this is the method log. So I'm going to go and change something. Let's see. Maybe I'll just go in and change something simple like the test speed. So this is set to 50 millimeters a minute. I'm going to change that to 25. Now, if I go back here, you see I'm still at revision 5. If I open the method change log, this shows all of the changes that were ever made to method A. So these were save changes. However, now I have a pending change. So you can see that my previous value is 50 millimeters a minute, and now my new value is 25. And the nice thing about this, since you can see the method revision history, you can see that Sally, just the other day, for revision 5, she actually had the method change from 25 to 50. So you can see the history there. I'm going to close that and just also note that right here, you can also open up to get the method revision history directly from that hyperlink. So now I'm going to do a save. So I can't just save that method like I used to be able to because it requires an electronic sign off. So here, my pending change is displayed under the pending changes. You can see the previous value is 50 millimeters a minute and my new value is 25. I'm able to also see some nice information here that what my file is named and the folder where this is being saved. I'm going to add a comment, change test speed back to original. And my username is already populated. Now I need to just enter my password and I can submit that for review. There's also the option here, save as draft. Now imagine Sally made a whole bunch of changes to this method, but it's around noon and she's hungry and she's ready to go to lunch. She's not yet ready to submit for review. She wants to save it as a draft because she wants to save her changes, but when she gets back from lunch, she wants to go back and edit that existing method. So we have the option to save as a draft, which basically means Sally is saving it in a draft mode. No one can test with that method until it's been submitted for review and approved. But Sally is allowed to go back into that method, continue to make changes and iterate, and then submit it when she's ready. So I'm going to submit this for review. So now you see my revision history has been updated. So if I open that up, there are no pending changes, but you can see this save change by Sally as well as her comment. So I mentioned previously that there's the save as function that could clear the revision history. So when this method was first set up, I didn't change that many parameters, but you can see this list is pretty long still. And I just kind of added a few results and I didn't do too much. So if you have a brand new method that you're creating and you'll be troubleshooting with, this list could be quite long. And if it's a development method, perhaps you would want to do a save as, rename that for a production method, but then link to the original method so you don't lose that entire revision history. So I'm going to go back out, back to the home screen. I'm still logged in as Sally here, so you can see that I'm logged in as Sally. Now I'm going to try to run a test. So, I have my method A here. This is what I just edited. I'm going to try to test with that. I get this nice information about a reminder to set my travel limits. And then, I see that I can't use this method file because this method file requires approval. So I'm getting a note that I need to obtain the necessary signatures before I can proceed. So methods are configured with a primary and secondary sign-off. So all Sally did was sign off on this, that she made the change, but she needs a secondary approver in order for her to test with this method. And although Sally is set to be a secondary approver, you can't approve the changes you make. You have to get someone else to approve the changes you make. So it's a little bit of that checks and balances to the system. So Sally's going to log out, and she's going to get her colleague Sam. So Sam is also a super user. So Sam was given the permission to be a secondary approver. So Sam's going to go in, and he's going to go to check out his reviews. So you can see when we logged in as Adam, the reviews, it was empty. But for Sam, he has something here for him to review. So he can see the date and the timestamp, as well as the user who made the change, that it's a method, where that file is saved, that it's a attention method, and that it's requiring secondary approval. So Sam has it here too. He can see some more information, and he can see exactly what Sally changed. He can see the previous value as well as the new value. He can see that this is revision 6. So he's going to approve that. He's going to add a comment like, how about okay to new speed, and then he has to put in his password. So this is his electronic signature, his secondary electronic signature, where he's confirming that yes, it's really him, Sam, that's approving this change. So now that that's been approved, that has cleared out of his work basket, essentially. So we're going to go back to the home screen here. So now maybe Sally got caught up with something, she had to run out, Sam's going to log out. We're going to have Newt sign in. So just as a reminder, Newt is the new guy. He's the new hire. So Newt's going to sign in. His home screen looks different than Sam and Sally. So he does not have access to the method tab, which means he cannot change testing parameters. So he's going to go in and click test. So he has method A here. Let's see now if he can open method A. So Sally made the changes, Sam approved the changes, and now Newt is trying to test with that method. Great, so Newt is in the software. He's going to maybe test this new part, 1, 2, 3, 4, and he's going to go and start the test. So he's running his test. He doesn't have a lot of options, right? So you can see that he doesn't have access to the method tab up here. He only has the test tab. Ooh, so the first test he ran actually failed. So we have the pass-fail component in this workspace, and you can see that his modulus value is low. Now, Newt at his previous company maybe developed some bad habits. He would hate when he would get a failed specimen. He would go in and delete it. he's right-clicking now, and he realizes, wait a second, I can't delete. So as part of his permissions and security, the way he was configured as a user, he's not allowed to delete tested specimens. So now he can't carry over some of those bad habits that he learned at his first job, at his new job. So he's left to just run more tests. Okay, good. So the second one passed. We'll just run one more. Okay, and another pass. So Newt just ran 3 tests here. You can see that we have the sample log, so we can open that, and we can see all of the pending changes because we haven't yet saved the sample file. So I'm going to close that out, and I'm going to hit finish. So this method and this test is configured to generate a PDF report. So Newt, he's saving this test. You can see the file name. You can see the folder where this is being saved. It's saving to just a generic output folder. He can look at all his pending changes because this is going to show up in the audit log. So it's good for him also to just look over and see what he actually did. And here is an example of the PDF report. So he can see here that he ran his tests, and you can see that one of the modulus values, it did fail. So maybe now Newt realizes, I forgot to enter new part ID for specimen 2 and 3. So he's going to make a comment, forgot to enter new part ID. And then he's going to put in his password, and he's going to submit that for review. He also has the option to save as a draft. So similar to the method revision history and electronic signatures for methods, a user can save the method as a draft or submit for review. So say Newt just ran 3 tests and then he was getting pulled into a meeting and he had to walk away. He could save that as a draft and then go back to it later. But submitting something for review means that he is finished with the testing and he's looking for approval on it. I'm going to click no. So let's go now. Let's log out from Newt. So he did his testing, and then Sam is going to go back on the system and just see what's going on. So Sam is going to go back here, and he can see, oh, I see, as a secondary approval, I can see that there's a sample file and a PDF that needs to be signed. So I'm going to just approve that sample file. I'm going to see what he's doing. I'm going to just approve, okay, put, and then type in my password. And then the PDF report, he's going to check out the results, and he can see that Newt signed off on this. So this is Newt's electronic signature on that PDF report. So he can see the results that Newt generated, and then he's going to just write okay, and then type in his password as a super user. It's going to exit out and then log out of the software. Now, say it's the end of the day. Maya, who is the manager, she's the lab manager, she's going to log into the software. You could see her home screen looks a bit different. So she has the analysis functionality as a manager. She knows how to use that. She also has full access to testing specimens and the method. But she's going to look because she knows Newt was supposed to run some tests today as part of his new hire training. So she's going to just check in on what results he generated. So Maya is looking at this report, and she sees that, okay, I can see Newt signed off on this, then Sam signed off on this next. So Sam maybe was the one that was helping Newt out with his new hire training. She can see his results here. So Maya will put in okay for new hire training, put in a note, and she's gonna have to type in her password and approve that. So that essentially then clears out of her reviews or her work basket. And now if I go into the audit trail, I'd be able to see all of this information all in the audit trail. So we generated that PDF report. I'm just going to now open that. So that was in the outputs folder. So you can see here that we created a PDF report with the results. And you can see all three signatures. So we can see Newt, who ran the test, he's the primary sign-off. Sam was the secondary sign-off. And then Maya, she was a tertiary or official sign-off. So depending on how your lab runs and what your protocols are, perhaps you only need one sign-off on a PDF report, or perhaps you need three. But as part of your own internal record system, you can choose how many signatures you would want, if any. And then now that this report has three sign-offs, now perhaps it's ready to be submitted into a database or into your quality system. So that concludes the demonstration. So just to recap, so there are 5 components of Bluehill Universal's traceability module. There's enhanced security, method revision history, sample change tracking, electronic signatures, and lastly, the system level audit trail. So that's just a high level introduction. There are some resources for you. So you always have your Instron sales representative. As mentioned, Bluehill's traceability module, it's not released yet. It will be released in February. But feel free, if you have interest in this, to reach out to your sales representative for a little bit more information. There'll also be a recording of this webinar that we will send out to anyone registered. We'll also put that up on our website, and there's more information on instron.com. So some additional informational guides. So within the handouts on this webinar, there is a PDF that's linked. So it's about configuring Active Directory security. So you can access that now through the GoToWebinar portal. There's also a white paper coming soon that goes into more detail on the traceability module and just more information that people should be aware of, and that's also coming soon. That will be uploaded to our website as well. So I think we have a couple minutes left. So thank you all for listening, and we'll open it up now for some questions.
All right, thanks so much, Elayne. I'm going to give her just a few seconds to review a few of the questions. I did get a number of them, so thank you for sending those in. While she's looking at those, I just want to mention a couple quick things. Reiterate, I know Elayne mentioned this, but we will send out a recording. I know a couple of you asked this. I'm also going to try and send out the slide deck. I know a couple of people were wondering if we were going to send those out, so we'll absolutely send that out with the recording. And then I also want to mention that a few of our application experts will be out at the MD&M West Show in Anaheim, California, February 11th through 13th. So if you are in that area and want to see the latest and greatest, you should definitely step by our booth and say hi. So with that being said, I'm going to try and dive into a couple questions. It looks like we've got some good ones here. So first off, is it possible to configure the system so that once you turn traceability on, you can't turn it off? And I'm just going to kind of juggle the mute switch here. So Elayne.
Sure. So you can turn, once you turn traceability on, you can configure to not be able to turn it off. So when you're configuring the system in security, so in my example, I had Adam, he was the admin. Adam had the ability to configure traceability, and he was the only person to configure traceability. So once traceability is turned on and configured, Adam's permissions to configure traceability can be disabled. So then not even Adam can edit that traceability anymore. So that would be the way that you can make it that no one, not even your IT personnel or lab manager, would be able to turn off traceability once it's been enabled.
Okay. So another question here is, I have Bluehill 3, but I'm budgeting to update my Instron to Bluehill Universal. There are so many parameters in Bluehill 3 that can be changed. Is it the same for Universal, and is everything tracked with traceability?
Okay, good question. There are so many different parameters within a method file, within a sample file, within Bluehill, and that pertains to all versions of Bluehill, obviously including Bluehill Universal. So we are tracking, I want to say, all permissions within Bluehill Universal, or all parameters. However, there are some minor ones that won't show up in the audit trail. So that information will be in that white paper that's going to come out in the next few weeks. So for example, something that we decided not to track, a user can change the colors on the graph. So as a default, the first specimen on the graphing line is red, the second one is a maroon, the third one is a green. And a user can configure the colors of the graph to say you want all of your lines to be purple. You can configure the software so that all your testing, all your graphs are purple, and we're not going to, that won't show up in the audit log. So we're not necessarily tracking the color that you're changing on your graph. We figured that's not a parameter that would affect your results. So there are a few parameters that aren't being tracked. Most of them have to do with the workspace, so more of nothing to affect your data, just more of something the way it looks. So that will come out in the white paper that will come out in the next few weeks. So stay tuned.
Okay, next question, we have one from Jeff. Will this be a new version of Bluehill or an add-on to our current Bluehill, currently on Bluehill 4.08?
Yeah, so sorry about that, I was unmuted. So one thing to keep in mind is that the permissions that we went through, those are all available in 4.08, but the traceability module will be an add-on. So in the next month or so, if you're interested in it, it would be an update to your current version. So it would be an additional module and an update.
All right, where is the audit trail saved? What is the retention time of the audit trail?
So the retention time is from the beginning as soon as you configure it. It is a database, so we do have instructions on how you would back up that database if you need to do so. However, that would be a very rare occurrence. It wouldn't have to be something that you would do on a monthly basis at all, maybe yearly if that's what you would want to do. But using the system every day, you wouldn't even have to back it up probably a year. There's lots of space in that database to store text information.
Okay. this next question is, after a method change request is submitted, before the request is approved, can the unchanged method still be used to perform a test? Can another user still use the unchanged method version?
So if you have a method that's been changed and submitted for review, that method cannot be used by any other user. So in my example, Sally made a change to her method. She submitted it for review, and then she tried to test with it, and she couldn't test with it. So even if Sam went in and tried to test with that method or Newt, they would get blocked because that method has not been approved, and you cannot test with that method until it's been approved. However, in my example, Sam was also configured to have secondary approval rights. So if Sam went in to try to test that method and it was blocked, he would be able to realize, oh, it needs to be approved. Let me go in to traceability, to my work basket, and look at what Sally changed and see if I should reject that or approve it. So if you have a lot of super users or power users in your lab that you would want to configure them so everyone has the ability to make changes to methods and approve those changes, you can configure it that way. Whereas like a Newt, say he tried to run a test using that method that wasn't approved, he's not allowed to be a secondary sign-off, so he would basically have to wait until he got his manager or two of his colleagues that are super users to go in and approve it. One thing that I didn't show in the demo was that Sally, Sam, and Maya were all configured as secondary approvers. So if you remember, Sam approved Sally's changes to that method. And because he approved it, it disappeared from his work basket, but it also disappeared from Maya's too. So Maya could have went in there and done the approval of that method, and it would have made that object disappear from her work basket as well as Sam. So you only need one person to be the secondary sign-off. Not all people that are configured as secondary sign-offs have to actually go into the software to make that change. So I hope that made sense and hope that answered your question.
All right, we've got definitely a lot more questions that rolled in. I know it's kind of a balancing act between like throwing these at Elayne while she's not answering them, and I am asking them. So since there is such a high volume, like we can see absolutely who's all asking these. I apologize we're not answering them right now, but we will follow up with emails. And so definitely you'll get answers to these questions. Just give us a little bit of time to get back to you. So that's going to wrap things up today. Definitely, if you want more information about traceability and how it can work for you in your testing lab, we encourage you to contact your local sales or service engineer for more details. Again, if you ask questions and you're waiting on an answer, we will contact you with that. You'll get a recording, the recording sent to you, and the slides. So you should be all set there, hopefully. We want to thank you for attending, and we hope you'll join us again for a future webinar. Thanks so much.